All right, so Sarah, you recently just posted in our community that you got your first couple of listings as a newer agent, and we're going to get into how you were able to do that. Before we do, can you just share with the audience how long you've been in this business of real estate, and where do you sell?
Yeah, so I'm located in Redding, California, and I got my license the beginning of this year. So been licensed for about 9 months now, and luckily discovered you back in October before I got my license. So it's been good.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk all about that, right? So, you just got your license at the beginning of 2024. I want to talk
Mhm.
about that point in time because I think that a lot of people that are thinking about getting into the industry come into this industry maybe thinking it's one thing and then finding out later it's a whole nother thing. Um, did you have that same experience or did you kind of know what you were getting yourself into?
I kind of knew what I was getting myself into just from watching your videos before even taking my exam. But it's still way harder than than what it seems to be because it's super simple. Like you have the plan and what you should do, but still running your own business, being disciplined and everything, it's so hard.
Yeah, no doubt. And so when you first got in, when you thought it was easier than you found out it to be, like what
Hmm.
did you think it was going to be? Like you got your license, you come out of the testing center, you're all fired up, you're filled with all this, what I call uninformed optimism, like you're going to take over the world. Like what was the
Hmm.
mindset at that point before you knew what you knew?
Yeah, I thought I was just gonna talk to some people. People were ready to sell and they were pretty much gonna be flocking my way because I'm now a realtor and I post on social media and I talk to my sphere and it just wasn't that.
Yeah. When you started, I want to talk about that in particular. I think a lot of new agents would share in that same feeling that you just talked about. Like, I'm going to get my license, and then naturally people are going to come my way. I'm going to post on social media, etc.
Hmm.
Where does that come from? Like, what made you what led you to believe that that would happen?
A lot of the brokers that I was speaking to. So I interviewed upwards to 10 brokers in the area, and they all pretty much said the same thing. It was, yeah, talk to your sphere, let them know that you are a realtor, post on social media every day, and host open houses. And if you do all of those things, then you'll make it.
Mm.
And with when I joined your program, so I joined a couple months after I got my license. Um, I kind of joined right when you were transitioning to learn your listing presentation first. And for that, that was my excuse to, okay, perfect. I don't need a cold call yet.
Yeah.
I can learn the listing presentation and nail it. And in the meantime, I will work my sphere, post on social media, host open houses, and pretty much got no results in 6 months of doing that.
So 6 months, you're taking the
Mm-hmm.
advice of like, hey, this is what people do. They post on social media, they talk to their sphere of influence, they do open out. Like, how much of that were you doing? Like, give us an idea of for that 6 month period of time, like what were you actually doing? Because I think a lot of new agents are probably doing some of the same stuff. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
were you doing that was producing just no results at all?
I was posting every single day.
Like what? What
I
kind of stuff were you posting?
just pretty much houses that went pending or new listings, all from my brokerage. Some nuggets of advice for real estate and just everything real estate. It's really what it was. So posting that, I was sharing on my story whenever I was looking at houses, doing pans of that, posting when I had open houses. So posting every single day. And then I also hosted open houses every single weekend. And Sphere, I guess I didn't necessarily call them all the time, but I changed my phone number because I moved to Reading last year and changed my phone number right when I got my license and said, hey, to every single person in my contacts, hey, I am a realtor now. And because of this, I'm changing my phone number to the local area and let them all know that I'm a realtor.
So you did everything you were asked to do. And how many listings did you get as a result of doing all of that?
None.
How many?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah.
So why do you think brokers continue to give this advice? Like, where does it come from, in your opinion? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious from your perspective. You had all these people telling you to do the exact same thing. You did it. I mean, you actually did
Yeah.
it. You actually did open houses every week. You were posting daily, sometimes twice a day, doing daily stories and then an actual evergreen type of post. And you did
Mhm.
something most agents don't do. You texted every single contact in your phone, and it led to zero sales, zero listings.
Yeah.
Where's the advice coming from? Like, what's your perception of this?
I do think that those techniques have worked for them, maybe just not to the scale of what I would like. But once they do that for a long period of time, then they see results. I think my issue is that I didn't want to wait around for results. I needed money now. And so that's why I know cold calling is the way. So,
Yeah. So you say that with conviction. You just said, I know cold calling is the way. There's a lot of people that don't want to hear that.
yeah.
They do not like that you just said that. They want to
Yeah.
think that they are looking for the path of least resistance. They're hoping
Hmm.
what you said is not true. And the reason why I want to have you on the podcast is to talk about the truth. And
Hmm.
there's a negative connotation towards cold calling. And that's
Yeah.
because most people that get into this business of sales want prospects and people to come to them. That's what they thought they were getting into. That's why I asked you
Yeah.
the question I thought, or that I asked.
Hmm.
It's not until they realize, wow, that passive approach to client acquisition, it doesn't work that well because I'm doing all these, nothing's happening. Then they
Hmm.
realize, okay, shoot, I have to go out there and I have to initiate conversations. That's where all the breakdown happens. That's the part nobody likes. They didn't think they were going to get into it. In fact, if I knew I was going to get into that, I probably wouldn't have been a realtor in the first place. So how did you make peace with the fact that, like, wow, no, I built it and nobody's coming. I have to go out there and make this happen. Like, how did you make peace with that?
Um, I mean, it was still a struggle, and real estate in general, your business is up and down, and you have good days and bad days. So it was still a struggle. And I guess I just knew that I had to make a change because it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, a lot of, as soon as you say the word, prospect or cold call,
Hmm.
people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. There's got to be something. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
You said to yourself, well, I tried all these other things. I have to do something. So,
Hmm.
so then you find me, we start working together. I would imagine the fear just didn't go away. I would imagine that the anxiety and the fear probably increased because it's like now you've invested all this money into hiring a coach.
Yep.
You're spending all this time learning stuff, learning how to communicate, learning how to sell, all this
Hmm.
stuff that you don't learn in your traditional path of like living on this, like you kind of fall into sales. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
you end up here. And so tell us what that was like learning all of the things you've learned in the beginning. Like, was it hard? Was it easy? Tell us about that.
In the beginning, it was just a lot of self-evaluation. And to this day, a lot of self-evaluation on changing who I am and what I do and the habits that I have. And it was a lot of memorizing scripts, which was good for me because I was like, great, I am not accountable for anything right now because I'm just learning my listing presentation. This is great. And so I had role play partners, multiple that we would meet every single day. That was awesome. And it wasn't until, so I originally signed up for 6 months in your program. It wasn't until I started getting those emails like, hey, you have 1 month left. And I just started freaking out saying, oh my goodness, I've been in this program for 5 months, learning scripts, practicing. I'm good at them. And I haven't done any action yet. So that's when I decided to get Vulcan, decided to call, and then finally seeing results because I actually put the work in.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about all that work in just a second. You said something a
Yeah.
minute ago that you said you had to change who you were. And
Hmm.
that's a key thing is everybody wants the technique, the tactic, the strategy. And to your point, what you just said, you got all of that and you still didn't do anything. It
Yeah.
wasn't until you started to change who you were that
Hmm.
actually got you to take action. Because I think you're right. Most people are like, all right, well, what I'm doing is not working. So let me go and invest in this thing and learn something. But that's not enough. you just learning more information, learning the scripts, learning the new listing,
Yeah.
that didn't change anything for you, did it?
Nope.
It wasn't until you actually applied it, and you hear me say this all the time, the learning's in the doing.
Hmm. Yep.
Talk to us about now you know what that means. Like, talk to us the difference between role playing your listing presentation script that you learned from me and actually
Hmm.
delivering a listing presentation to a seller prospect and how different those worlds are.
Crazy different because your role play partners, they pretty much go with the flow and then maybe throw in a ball here and there about a no or something. But when you're actually doing listing presentations, the conversation goes so many different ways, and you still have to find yourself bringing it back to the script no matter what. But that's pretty much the biggest difference is that the actual seller will ask questions in the middle of your presentation or conversation that totally just threw a wrench into it. So that's the difference.
Yeah, let me ask you your opinion on a question that I get from agents that I coach all the time. And you probably heard agents say this in some of our coaching calls. I get this question. They say, Brandon, is it better for me to, like you, take the next couple of months, learn all this stuff? It's like drinking from a fire hose. You're teaching us all this stuff. Is it
Yep.
better that I take a couple of months and learn all that before I do anything? Or would it make more sense for me to like pick up the phone, call people, go on appointments as I'm learning, even though it's not perfect? Like, knowing what you know now, which path do you think
Mhm.
makes more sense and why?
So I would probably say a mix. I know like different personalities are good for either one. For me personally, I found a lot of confidence when it came to learning the scripts. And the fact that I knew what to say when I got there
Mm,
made me so much better when I was there. I'm not the type of person to just wing it and be super good at it. So I like to feel prepared, and that just might be my perfectionism. But I would say a mix. I do wish that I started calling sooner because, yes, I would have learned how, like the phone skills in general, I would have learned that way sooner. I would have had the hands on experience when it came to listing presentations sooner. So I wish I did do that sooner. So
yeah.
instead of 5 months of learning the listing presentation and the scripts, maybe 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I changed the process in which I work with an agent, because I
Hmm.
know if you have a presentation that you're confident in, that will help you to actually call people, because
Yep.
like I know what I'm going to do when I get there, and if I don't,
Hmm.
then chances are I'm not going to do anything. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's actually break down your business right now. So let's start off with lead generation. What lead sources are you focused on right now?
Expireds.
Okay. So is there anything else, or are you just focusing 100% on that right now?
Pretty much 100%. I've called a couple for sale by owners and just there wasn't a lot. One and two, they just didn't work out. There's only like three of them. But expireds, I had a lot. I think I had almost 200 and something leads when I first signed up for Vulcan and just plowed through all of those and going through them again. And yeah.
Okay. So you're working expired listings, which there are pros and cons to that lead source, right?
Mhm.
It's a hard lead to convert for a new agent because there's so much competition, right? And so let's
Mhm.
talk to the audience about how you're going about this. First off,
Yeah.
what is your prospecting methodology? Are you calling them? Are you door knocking? Are you texting? Are you emailing? Are you sending them messages on Facebook? Are you sending them mailers? Like, what is your approach to generating the conversation?
So I call
You call.
on
All right.
Vulcan. Yep. And then once they're an actual lead, then I always, mail the thank you card and email them. So
Okay, so you're calling. Walk us through kind of what that process looks like. So um, you get these leads. When do you call them? How many are you calling? How many conversations are you having per day, roughly?
yeah, that I definitely need to work on consistency. And I think that's my biggest struggle right now because I've only been calling for about a month. I would say roughly 9 contacts a day, which is not good.
But 9 contacts a day. That's 9 conversations with like the highest converting lead. So that's
That is true.
to be fair. That's like
Yeah.
having because let's look at the results. In 30 days, you got 2 listings in the last 30 days, correct?
Yeah.
So if you were to equate that to like a circle prospecting type
Mhm.
of activity, it might take you 6 months of 30
Right.
contacts a day to get two
Hmm.
listings where you so don't beat yourself up too bad.
I know. I that's one thing that I definitely struggle with is that shame and guilt of not calling as much as I feel I should be. And I
Sure.
know that the whole should term is not the best that you should use for yourself, but
Yeah.
I
We
struggle
all
with that.
we all should do a lot of things that we don't do.
Yeah.
The question
Right.
is, will you? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so you're able to in a short amount of time get two
Hmm.
listings in a very competitive market. You're in a market of one of the top listing agents in the country. And I don't know if you even know that in Redding, California. And he's got a big team there. And so you are able, as a newer agent with newer
Hmm.
skill set, able to convert two listings in 30 days, which is really impressive. The
Yeah.
audience listening or watching says, well, how in the world did she do this? So let's first break down the conversation. So you
Hmm.
get somebody on the phone. First off, what is your mindset and how are you approaching the conversation?
So, I mean, I feel more comfortable because I have the script, and so I know exactly what I'm going to say. And so it's just the pattern interrupt, and that typically works. I've only had two people hang up on me with the pattern interrupt. I've had a couple people say no, but really a majority of the people say yes, and you're able to get into your questions.
That's awesome. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you've learned how to kind of nail the first 10 seconds of a cold call. That's which
Hmm.
helps you really get into a good conversation. Even though they might be getting calls with a lot of other agents, which they are.
Yeah.
Once you get past that, then what is kind of your goal in that conversation? What is it that you're looking to get? What types of questions are you asking? Like, what are you trying to do in the middle part of that cold call?
So it's all about motivation, their time, why they're moving. One of my favorite questions is, I mean, the house looks great. Why not just stay there? Why not just stay put? And typically they're like, "What? What was that question?" Because no one asked that, so
That's right.
they're so like taken off guard. And I mean, they'll answer it. They're like, "Well, no, we really want property, and we want horses," and they'll tell you exactly what they want through that.
It's great. And from a skills perspective, have you asked it the other way before when you said, well, why are you guys moving? And then say, well, they get mad when you ask it that way. Like, well, that's none of your business. Have you ever done that before?
Yeah, there's times where I ask the wrong question and they do not like it.
Yeah. So you've learned how to reverse the language pattern so that
Hmm.
you get better answers, right? You ask better
Yeah.
questions, you get better answers. And so you've learned how to get people to fight for their motivation. You've learned how to do that, right? Because you're making the argument for the first time out of any agent they talk to, you're the
Hmm.
only one making the argument that they shouldn't move.
Yeah.
And what we know is that if someone has motivation, they fight for it. And so you've said, well, listen, I've got a lot of clients looking to move into your neighborhood. What in the world are you considering moving for? Right. And then they say,
Yeah.
well, Sarah, we'd love to, but, and then they give you all these reasons of why they want to move. Okay. Once you've
Hmm.
gotten motivation, so we talked about using some type of pattern interrupt. Which one, out
Hmm.
of curiosity, do you use that you're finding success with?
Yeah. So I say, I'll say, "Hi, Brandon.
Yeah, this is him.
Brandon, this is Sarah. I'm a realtor. And before you hang up, I was hoping to ask you a quick question about the home that's for sale. Would that be okay?"
Beautiful. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And that works a lot. Then you're asking questions to really get dive deep into their motivation. Once you
Hmm.
have that, how are you transitioning that conversation into an appointment where the seller agrees to have you come to their house?
Yeah. So it's just can I make a quick recommendation? And then you get into asking for the appointment. And it's
Yeah.
super simple. Like it truly is following the script. Even when I call now, I have the script in front of me. I have the dark questions right next to it. I have objections right next to it. And it's so cool that yeah, you might not know what to say because people are just going to throw all these different objections at you, but you have everything right in front of you and can just refer to it.
Yeah, I love it. So with expired listings, I would imagine that a lot of your listing appointments come out of the first contact. But how
Mhm.
important has lead follow up been for you?
So actually, all of my listing appointments have been
First
from first
contacts.
contact. And I
Yeah.
think too, I've gotten really lucky. The two listings that I currently have, they were expired from a year ago. And so no one's reaching out to them anymore. And they're like, yeah, we still have that motivation to why they wanted to move in the first place. And we still want to move. As far as follow-up goes, I just need work on that.
You're still working on it. Fair enough. Well,
Yeah, still
because
working on it.
I totally get it. Most agents that only work expireds don't have great lead follow up because they're so used to
Mhm.
getting appointments from the first contact that they really don't have a
Mhm.
lead follow up. But you'll
Yeah.
work on that.
I
Um,
definitely have a pipeline and yeah, just narrowing down my skills and consistency in pursuing that is what I'm working on.
yeah, and you'll get to it, right? You're not going to solve everything in a month.
Yeah.
So just really quick to take a step back with lead sources, you are calling old and new expireds to be fair, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a mixture of that? Like if you do 10 contacts a day, do you do 5 and 5 or is it random? Do you have any, do you say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on new, hour on old or anything like that?
So when I first got Vulcan, I was just going through all of the contacts and it started from newer and then went to older. Now when I get on there and there's a newer expired, I'll call them first and then I get into the expireds that I hadn't reached.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. All right. And then when you get that appointment, now let's transition to the most important part, which we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, which is what do you do when you get the listing appointment? What do you say? How do you show up, et cetera, et cetera? You've learned a process that you walk
Mhm.
sellers through. Um, if you were to look at that process, you don't have to go through the whole thing, Sarah, but like,
Mhm.
are there maybe one, two, or three parts of the listing presentation that you've learned that you find to be the most impactful when you're on a listing appointment?
I would say setting the agenda because
Yeah.
you're walking them through what to expect versus them going into I mean they don't usually go to listing presentations and they don't know what to expect. And so you're breaking it down for them saying, "Hey, these are the three things that we're going to go through today and then if you have any questions let me know." So it's
That's
been
great.
really good. And then especially as expired with the script saying I brought a list of homes that failed to sell for really one reason. And then you talk about how the agent's willing to say anything and they fully relate to that because they've already had a bad experience with their previous agent. And I hear the all of the horror stories with that. And so I feel even more confident that I'm coming to the listing presentation with that, knowing that they've already had a terrible experience and I'm going to give them a great one. So
Yeah,
it's been
I
really
love
good.
it. It's so good because what you're talking about is really getting the seller's permission to shoot them straight 100%. Because most agents, they don't know how to do that. And so they go in there,
Mm-hmm.
not that they're like, I don't know, maybe some are, but hopefully people have some integrity and they're not literally trying to go in there and blatantly lie to sellers. But what they are
Yeah.
doing is they do stretch the truth. They do make things seem a little bit better than they are. They do tend to
Mm-hmm.
side on the air, like tell people their homes are worth a little bit more than they know they are in hopes they win the business. And so you
Right.
go in there, you do the exact opposite. You say, listen, if we're going to work together, I'm going to tell you the truth either way, you know? And so now you're able
Mm-hmm.
to not only uh, get listings, but you're able to get listings through integrity, which means
Mm-hmm.
you have good listings with good clients under the right expectations, not after a bunch of BS that you had to go there and convince and persuade and sell them. And
Right.
we don't do any of that, right?
Right.
Yeah, love it. Okay, what's it been like as a new agent having and servicing these two listings? Because that brings a whole nother bout of stress and anxiety. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I have one closing on Friday, which is great. But
That's
with
great.
that, I should have been more, I should have had more boundaries when it came to the actual seller. She calls me at least 10 times a day,
Yeah,
and I'm always answering. And then there's sometimes where I'm just like, hey, I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back. But really just learning my own boundaries and communicating that with the seller, like, hey, these are my hours, these are the times that I'll be able to answer your call or just feel free to text me. But yeah, that's been a big hurdle for me is just having a very needy seller.
yeah. And do you feel
Yeah.
like as a new agent that, I mean, you didn't have the experience to pull from? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
probably found yourself in conversations willing to offer more of your time and willing to do things that now, the next time you do this, you know to have some to your point, some boundaries. And as you set
Yeah.
boundaries with people, respect goes up. But as a newer agent, did you feel like maybe you didn't even know to set them, but did you feel like you were almost in a position to like, well, it's my first client. I kind of have to do this.
Yeah, for sure. Like, oh, I really want to take care of them
Yeah.
and this is how I'm going to do that. But now that we've been in our escrow, I mean, I've known her for now about a month,
Yeah.
and every day it's just calls and calls and calls.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can be, direct with her to say, hey, loved working with you. Can you do me a favor now and ask for a testimonial, right? Hopefully,
Hmm.
right? Ask for a
Yeah.
referral, things of that nature. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so talk to us about the importance of time management and following a schedule as a newer agent where you don't have a boss per se, checking in on
Hmm.
you and holding you accountable. How hard has that been to be disciplined in this industry?
Extremely.
Yeah, it's hard. It's probably the hardest part.
Creative avoidance is 100% real. When I first started, I was going to every Association of Realtor meeting. I was going to every gathering and pretty much every event that I could to get my name and my face out there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't do anything for me. That's just wasting my time. So I think that in itself, time management has been the hardest thing being a realtor. And I actually just watched yours and Ben's video that you guys just posted. It is so true that the less, like, the amount of control that you have in your time is the amount of control that you have in your life. And so with being out of schedule and being like, oh, okay, it's okay, I can just stay here for, I can hang out for a couple hours, or I can do this for a little bit, or I can clean the house. That's one of my excuses. Oh, I need to clean this. um, it truly impacts the future of my career.
That's right.
So it's really just about having control, and the more control that you have in your time, the more control you have in your life. And
That's
so
right.
yeah.
Totally agree. And I agree with the other thing you said is that like time management probably is the greatest challenge for agents, whether
Mhm.
they know it or not. That is
Yes.
our biggest challenge, by
Mhm.
far, by far. Okay. If you could go back, get your license all over again. I don't know. What was it, January when you got your license?
Yeah.
So you could probably picture yourself. You're just like in the
Mhm.
testing center. You're like hitting the last thing. You're waiting for the answer to come back. You remember that, right? And
So
so
confident because I knew I passed.
yeah, it's great. So that Sarah is coming out of the testing center, and the Sarah
Mhm.
that's sitting in front of the camera right now sees that Sarah, and you can
Mhm.
only give her. We'll give you two pieces of advice. What
Oh,
is the two things the Sarah right now tells that Sarah who's walking out of that testing center who just passed her exam?
I would tell myself, you already know what to do. Just execute on that. And just reiterate the importance of habits, because truly it's like, okay, when you get into the habit of something, that is what creates you. You are your habits. And so I would just tell my newer self or my older self or younger self that I need to stick to my habits. I know what habits I need to do, and it'll all work out with compound effect. It'll all work.
Yeah. That's
So,
right. That's right. And last one for me, I'm always curious with someone that within their first year who decides to get into coaching, which is such a huge, huge, huge decision, um,
mhm.
economically, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, all of it, right? It is difficult to get to that point.
Yeah.
For you, how did you come to this point in your mind where you said, okay, I need to get into coaching? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, it was a mix of things. So one, I had already been watching your stuff. And I knew it worked. I knew it was the way. That truly was it. I knew it was the way. And financially, yes, it was really daunting to be like, okay, I'm not making any money and I'm going to invest into this. And it was a mix of, if you invest into yourself, you're going to get out of that. Like, you're going to get multiple times what you put in out of that. And so I knew that with coaching, I'll make way more. So it was that. And then also around that same time where I was looking into getting coaching, my husband sent me a podcast where it was pretty much the same thing. We're talking about how the more that you invest into yourself, the more you get out. And the person of the podcast actually talked about, he spent $100,000 on himself in coaching for 1 year, but made X amount of millions of dollars. So I just knew coaching was the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's been true for my own life, right?
Yeah.
I still to this day, 20 years later, I still am in coaching,
Mhm.
and it's like the best investment of all time. Has that been true for you? In the last 30 days of getting these two listings, what type of revenue will you earn off those roughly?
I'll be getting about 10,000. They're smaller listings, but way more than I've got in the past nine
6 months.
months. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's why I'm excited. That's why I told you I wanted to have you on this podcast, is because now that you know how to do, now that you've done it, really, now that
Mhm.
you've proven to yourself, you've done the work, you've learned everything you needed to learn, you've actually put it into practice, you've gotten the result, you're going to get a return on that result. When you
Mhm.
look forward, what do your goals look like, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely need to sit down for next year and do the business plan. And I look really forward to that because I
Yeah.
know that with the work that I put in is what I'll get out. And I think I can get six figures plus. So,
Yeah, that's exciting because we do
yeah.
the business planning in October, which you'll be part of. So I don't know what type of income your spouse makes or what you're used to, but if you in 2025 get to six figures or more, like what type of income impact would that make on you guys?
Oh, a ton. Um, Being able to travel. We currently have a lot of debt with me being in real estate. So, paying all of that off and
Sure.
just being able to have that financial freedom of buying things that we want or need without stressing and in marriage, if there's financial stress, there's just stress in your marriage. And so trying to get rid of that. So I
That's
look
great.
forward to it.
What does your husband think of the person you're becoming?
Oh, he loves it. He's very entrepreneurial mindset. And so he loves that. And he's my biggest supporter. So he was the one who was like, yeah, quit your full-time job, go for it.
It's
Because he
amazing.
knows and he's a visionary and he could see that with me quitting my job and pursuing real estate full time, I can make way more than if I were to stay at that job.
Yeah, and having a supportive spouse is like,
Hmm.
it's so important.
Yeah.
So important. Well, listen, I appreciate this. What I'd like to do, it's Tuesday, September 17th,
Hmm.
maybe a year from now, have you back on the podcast and then talk about
Yeah.
like what things have looked like now that you know what you know, doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
That could be really interesting if you're open to that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, appreciate the time. Truly, you will make an impact certainly on people that watch the show. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah. Thank you for all of your advice and your coaching and the way that works.
Yep. All good,
Yeah.
girl. I'll see you soon. Okay, Sarah?
All right. Bye.
All right. Take care.